Good morning, children. Hope everybody is safe and well, and you are enjoying the story of Street Child. Now, today it's Tuesday, 12th May 2020, and we'll be doing the next chapter of Street Child. Now, yesterday we read that Jim manages to run away from the workhouse and he's landed on the streets of London. Okay, and today what we are going to do is we are going to make a comparison of the workhouse and the streets in London. So the task is going to be slightly different today. But before that, let's actually read the chapter. Now, the resources that you will need for this lesson are a pen and a sheet of paper. So I'm going to pause the slide so that you can get your resources and you are all ready for the lesson. Now, learning intention, I can use adjectives to describe a setting in a story. Success criteria, I can locate and use information from a text. I can skim information to gain an understanding of the text. I can use my knowledge to find the difference between two settings. So, in your best handwriting, write down your learning intention. Chapter 9. The Jaw of the Iron Dog. Jim knew one thing for sure. He must keep away from policemen. If they see me, they'll send me back, he thought. He remembered the white-faced boys in the yard, but I'll run away again as soon as I get a chance. Somewhere in his head was the thought of finding Rosie again. She had been his mother's friend. Maybe if he found her, he would find Emily and Lizzie too. But London was a huge, throbbing, noisy place. He had no idea which way to go. The shops were still open and busy, and the streets were full of traders carrying trays of fish and fruit, shouting out their wares. A woman was selling coffee from a handcart. The smell of it reminded him of that morning in the kitchen of the big house when Rosie had given his mother some of his lordship's coffee to drink. Now read the remaining chapter silently in your minds. Okay, I'm going to read the ending of the chapter. The house upstairs was in darkness, but down in the basement window was the soft glow of a candle. He tumbled down the steps, tripping himself up in his big boots, and fell against the door. "Emily! Emily!" he shouted out. Before he could raise his fist to hammer on the door, it was pulled open, and he staggered against a girl. Now, the guided reading questions. Why didn't Tip escape when he had the chance? Why did Jim need to keep away from policemen? Why didn't the boy Jim met on the streets want to swap clothes with him? How did Jim know he had found the right street when searching for the house where Rosie worked? How did Jim know he had found the right house when searching for the house where Rosie worked? Okay, write down the answers. I'm going to pause the slide. Write down your answers and then go to the answer slide to check your answers. Think about what you have read in this chapter. Now the answers. Why didn't Tip escape when he had the chance? He was too scared about getting caught. Why did Jim need to keep away from policemen? They would send him back to the workhouse. Why didn't the boy Jim met on the streets want to swap clothes with him? Jim was wearing workhouse clothes, so he might get spotted and taken back. How did Jim know he had found the right street when searching for the house where Rosie worked? He remembered the finch in its cage was on the street. How did Jim know he had found the right house when searching for the house where Rosie worked? He remembered the metal boot scraper in the shape of a dog's head. So now in this picture you can see that Jim has escaped from the workhouse and he is on the London streets. So it's quite confusing because he is a little boy and just by himself on the London streets. It must have been very, very confusing for him, but he still managed to find the right house where he actually wanted to go. So he found the house where Rosie lived. Now, for your SPAG activity, we are going to do adjectives. Now, you know well that adjectives are actually describing words. Now, in this chapter, when Jim escapes from the workhouse, he lands up on the streets of London. Now, in the initial part of the chapter itself, there are adjectives that are used to describe London. Now, I spotted whilst I was reading the beginning of the chapter, I found a few adjectives that were there right at the beginning of the chapter. So, I think one of the adjective was noisy. You have to find out 3 adjectives which the author has used to describe London during those days. You can see a picture there. Those are the streets of London during Victorian times. So you are going to find 3 adjectives. If you can find more than 3, that's really good. But the least you can find are at least 3 adjectives to describe London. You can go back to the video, you can watch you can read the chapter again and you can find the 3 adjectives that are used to describe London. Now, life on the streets. So Jim has to survive on the streets by himself. He's scared in case people come and chase him. He meets lots of different people. Okay, so you can imagine his plight. He doesn't have parents, nobody to look after him, and he's all by himself. He doesn't have anything with him, no clothes, nothing. He just wore his workhouse clothes and he's managed to escape and he's landed on the streets. But because his life was so miserable in the workhouse, he thought of escaping from the workhouse. Now, your task is the workhouse is very different to the London Jim escapes to. Explain fully the differences between the 2 settings. Think about what was happening in each place, the atmosphere, the words used by the writer. Okay, so you read the chapter and in fact the chapter before this as well, yesterday's one. Now, Jim was first at the workhouse and then he manages to escape to London. Now both the places, both the settings are quite different. So you have to explain fully the difference between the 2 settings. Okay, how was the workhouse and how was London? What was happening in each place? How was the atmosphere? Now, one of the things that I would say is he had found his freedom on the streets of London, right? Whereas in the workhouse, he did not have any freedom. He had to follow like severe, I would say like strict rules and regulations. So on the streets of London, he was free, whereas in the workhouse, he was quite miserable and he was unhappy in the workhouse as well. What are the words used by the writer? Okay, to describe the streets of London as well as the workhouse. So you're going to write 2 paragraphs. One where he's in the workhouse, and in the second paragraph you're going to write about London, and then try finding out the difference between the London and the workhouse. So the workhouse was very quiet, whereas London was very noisy. So that is one comparison that I've made. So go through the chapter and find out the difference between the workhouse and London. Okay, email me all of your answers, and I'll give you feedback through emails. Good luck with the task and see you tomorrow.